The streetlights flickered like nervous eyes as Ava Carter's sedan glided through the quiet streets of Pinewood Heights. It was just past midnight, and the world felt still, except for the tension Ava carried in her shoulders. She had just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. Her scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic and hand sanitizer, and her eyes burned from too many sleepless nights. All she wanted was to make it home, take a hot shower, and rest beside her son. Then came the red and blue lights. They flashed behind her like a warning from God. Ava's heart dropped into her stomach. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Not again. She signaled and pulled over calmly, placing both hands on the wheel. She had done nothing wrong. Her tags were up to date. She hadn't been speeding, and she wasn't swerving. But in Pinewood Heights, being black was enough of an offense. The officer approached slowly, boots crunching on the gravel, flashlight bouncing between her side mirror and the back seat. She glanced up to the rearview mirror. The man walking toward her car was tall, pale, square-jawed. His uniform was crisp, but there was something cold in the way he moved. He tapped the window. She rolled it down halfway. License and registration. No greeting. No explanation. His voice sounded like a command issued in a war zone. Ava complied. "May I ask why I was pulled over, officer?" The man didn't answer. He took her documents, scanned them, then looked at her like she was a piece of evidence rather than a person. "You match the description of a suspect in a robbery nearby." Ava blinked. "What?" "I'm coming from the hospital. I'm a nurse." "Step out of the vehicle," he said sharply. Fear, real, crawling fear, clutched at her throat. She hesitated. "Out. Now." With trembling hands, she opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. He patted her down roughly, as if looking for something she'd never owned. His hands lingered too long. Then he opened her car door, rummaged through her bag, ignoring her protests. "Sir, you can't just. That's my purse. Those are my work IDs, and—" "I said you match the description," he growled, pocketing a small envelope of cash from her glove box, her rent money. "This is evidence." Ava's mouth opened in shock. "That's my money." "It's not." "Anything else you want to admit now?" he asked, stepping closer, his badge catching the light. "Or should I take you in?" She froze. Her mind raced. If she pushed back, would she end up on the news? Shot. Silenced? "I just want to go home," she said softly. His lips curled into a half smirk. "Then be quiet and drive." He got back in his squad car. The lights flicked off. The quiet street felt colder than before. Ava got in her car and sat there for a full minute, shaking. Her rent money gone, her dignity stripped, and worst of all, her faith in those who wore the uniform shattered. She didn't know his name yet, but she'd remember his face. And one day, the world would too. Silence isn't safety. The morning after the stop, Ava stood in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to tame the curls that framed her exhausted face. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The rent money was gone, but what lingered even more deeply was the shame, the kind that slithered under her skin and made her doubt her own reality. Was it really theft if a cop took it? Could she even report it? She dabbed concealer under her eyes and forced a breath through her nose. "You don't have time to fall apart," she reminded herself. Malik still needs breakfast. Her son, only 8, was finishing a bowl of cereal when she walked into the kitchen. He looked up with the kind of warmth that could melt concrete. "Mommy, are you okay?" Ava smiled gently, touching his cheek. "I'm fine, baby." She wasn't. She dropped him off at school, then parked her car around the corner from the Pinewood Heights Police Department. Her fingers hovered over the ignition. Am I really going to do this? The thought of stepping into that building made her chest tighten. What if they laughed at her? Or worse, what if they made her a target? Still, she couldn't stay silent. Inside, the air smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. A white receptionist behind bulletproof glass barely glanced up as Ava approached. "I'd like to file a complaint," Ava said, voice steady despite the fear rising inside her. "Name?" "Ava Carter." The receptionist clicked her pen, gave her a form, and told her to wait. Ava sat in a hard plastic chair, the fluorescent lights buzzing above her. She wrote every detail she could remember. The stop, the officer's build, his face, his tone, the stolen money. When the form was done, she handed it in and left. No one asked for clarification. No one offered sympathy. That night, she kept the lights off in her apartment. Every sound made her jump. Every car engine made her flinch. A week passed. Then two. No word from internal affairs. No return calls. She might have let it go, if not for the letter. It arrived in an unmarked envelope, slid under her door late at night. No return address. No signature. Just 4 words written on plain white paper. You're not the first. Ava stared at the note, heart pounding. The next morning, she took it with her to work and showed it to her friend Tanya, a fellow nurse who always knew how to keep a secret. You think this is from someone in the department? Tanya whispered over their coffee break. Has to be. Who else would know? Ava said, they knew where I live. That scares me. But also means you're right, Tanya said carefully. He's done this before. He'll do it again. Ava nodded slowly. The wheels in her mind were turning now. She wouldn't stay silent anymore. The leak. Ava didn't sleep for 3 nights after receiving the letter. Each time she closed her eyes, she pictured the officer's smirk, his hand reaching into her glove box, and the weight of helplessness that followed. But that letter, you're not the first, haunted her in a different way. Somebody out there wanted her to fight. So she started digging. She combed through local news archives, police blotters, and community boards online, looking for similar stories. She called the station again, but her messages were never returned. She filed a Freedom of Information request for records on the officer she suspected, though she still didn't know his name. Then, one afternoon, she received a blocked call. Hello, Miss Carter? A man's voice, deep, steady, and cautious. Yes. Who is this? I can't tell you that, but I work in the department. You filed a complaint 2 weeks ago about an officer who pulled you over. Ava felt her body freeze. I didn't know who else to turn to, the voice continued. But I saw what he did. I've seen it before. His name is Officer Brent Mallory. He's been with the department for 10 years. Clean record, on paper. But off the record, he's got a reputation. For what? Ava asked, already knowing the answer. For targeting black residents, particularly women. Stops that go unlocked. Body cams malfunctioning. Complaints that vanish. Why hasn't he been fired? The voice sighed. Because he's protected. His uncle is Chief Randall Mallory. Ava's heart dropped. The caller continued. He's untouchable inside the system. But if you want to take him down, don't go through internal affairs. Go public. Get someone on the outside. Who are you? She whispered. Doesn't matter. What matters is, he stole from you. And he's done worse to others. Look up Nadine Foster. 2019. That's all I can give you. The line went dead. Ava stared at her phone, chills running down her arms. That night, she searched for Nadine Foster. The name led her to an old blog post, buried deep under pages of unrelated results. The post detailed a terrifyingly similar story. Nadine, a college student at the time, had been stopped, humiliated, searched without cause, and robbed during a late-night encounter with a Pinewood Heights officer. No charges were filed. She dropped out a semester later. Ava clicked the contact link. To her surprise, Nadine replied the next day. You're not alone. I've been waiting for someone else to speak up. I'll talk to you. Just promise me you won't let him scare you into silence. That was the moment Ava knew this wasn't just about her anymore. The next morning, she called the local paper, the Pinewood Herald. But they wouldn't listen. They offered a polite, corporate shrug. Without hard evidence or an official investigation, we can't publish anything defamatory. So Ava turned to the only person she knew might take a risk for the truth, a former classmate turned independent journalist, Darius Lane. She hadn't seen Darius in years, not since high school. He ran a popular blog now, The Truth Report, known for tackling the stories traditional media avoided. She sent him an email, not expecting a reply. He responded in 15 minutes. This sounds big. I'm in. Let's expose this bastard. Building the case. Darius Lane met Ava at a quiet cafe on the edge of downtown, the kind of spot where eyes didn't linger and questions weren't asked. He slid into the booth across from her with a recorder, a notepad, and an intensity in his eyes that hadn't changed since high school debate club. You look exactly like someone who's about to blow the roof off a department, he said, offering a small smile. Ava tried to smile back, but nerves danced in her stomach. I just want the truth out, and I want my son to grow up not being afraid of red and blue lights behind him. Darius nodded. Let's begin. She told him everything. The stop, the theft, the intimidation, the anonymous tip, the buried case of Nadine Foster, the silence from the department. Darius took it all down like scripture. You still have a note? He asked. She slid it across the table. He studied it, then smiled grimly. This is gold. It proves someone inside is scared of this guy, too. That means there's more. We just have to dig. He started making calls, requesting interviews, cross-referencing police reports with victims' social media posts. By the end of the week, he had found 4 other women, all black, all residents of Pinewood Heights, who had been harassed, stopped, or threatened by a white officer matching Brent Mallory's description. But they were terrified. One woman, Keisha Monroe, hung up mid-sentence. Another, Layla Richardson, broke into tears. He said if I talked, he'd plant something on me next time. Ava felt the rage building again. He's a predator in a uniform. Darius leaned forward. That's what we'll prove. Over the next 2 weeks, they built a digital timeline of Officer Mallory's stops. Darius hacked together a map using anonymous data from traffic apps, court records, and street cam footage. Patterns began to emerge. Late-night stops in predominantly black neighborhoods. Body cam footage routinely lost. No dashboard footage logged. Then they got a break. A former parking enforcement officer named Luis Delgado agreed to meet them. He'd quit the department 2 years ago after witnessing something he couldn't live with. I saw Mallory push a woman face first in her car window because she took too long getting her license, Luis said, voice shaking. I reported it. Next week, my locker was trashed, my hours cut, and I got accused of stealing overtime. Did you record anything? Darius asked. Luis smiled faintly. I did something better. I backed up footage on my private drive. Thought I might need it one day. He handed over a flash drive. If you're going to take him down, you'll need more than stories. You'll need proof. That night, Darius and Ava watched the footage together in silence. It showed Officer Mallory yelling, shoving, stealing, the real man behind the badge. Ava stared at the screen, fists clenched. This isn't just evidence, she whispered. This is war. Darius nodded. And it's time we let the whole world know who they're really saluting. Court of public opinion. Darius didn't publish the article right away. He crafted it like a weapon, sharp, deliberate, and unignorable. Every sentence struck with precision. Every quote from Ava, Nadine, and Luis added weight. He embedded the video clips with timestamps, blurred faces, redacted names when needed, but not Officer Brent Mallory's. His name was bolded. His badge number displayed. His crimes lay bare. The piece dropped on a Thursday at 9 a.m. By noon, it had 80,000 shares. By 3 p.m., it hit 500,000. By sunset, it was everywhere. Hashtag the uniform is a lie began trending on X, formerly Twitter. Activists demanded action. Community members flooded the Pinewood Heights Police Department with calls. A local civil rights attorney offered to represent Ava pro bono. By the weekend, major news outlets picked up the story. CNN ran a segment. MSNBC aired a panel. Even Fox tried to spin it, but the evidence was too damning to ignore. Inside the Pinewood Heights PD, chaos was erupting. Chief Randall Mallory held a press conference and tried to downplay it. These are unverified claims, he said, sweat beading at his temple. We take allegations seriously. Internal Affairs is looking into it, but it was too late for damage control. The truth was out, and people weren't asking anymore. They were demanding. Ava stood outside her apartment, reporters gathering around her like bees to honey. She wore a navy blue blazer, her hair pulled back, her voice unwavering. I never wanted to be the face of a movement, she said to the cameras. I just wanted to get home that night. I just wanted to feel safe. But I was robbed, not just of my money, but of my dignity. And I'm not the only one. I'm speaking up so no other woman has to go through what I did and be met with silence. Inside, Malik watched his mother on TV and beamed. My mommy's famous, he said. No, Tanya corrected gently. Your mommy's brave. But the spotlight came with shadows. That night, Ava received the first threat. A piece of cardboard taped to her door. "You think this ends well for you?" The next day, someone followed her home from the store. 2 nights later, a brick shattered her living room window. She called the police. They sent a cruiser with an officer who refused to get out of the car. That's when she realized this wasn't just about Brent Mallory anymore. It was about the entire system that enabled him. But she didn't back down. With Darius by her side and more victims coming forward, the case was growing too big to bury. On the 3rd week after the story went viral, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation into the Pinewood Heights Police Department. Internal affairs was removed. An outside task force was brought in, and Brent Mallory? Suspended without pay. But Ava knew suspension wasn't justice. This was only the beginning, the trial they never wanted. The courtroom smelled like old wood and tension. Ava sat beside her attorney, Danielle Holt, a no-nonsense black woman in a charcoal gray suit who had spent years fighting cases just like this one, except none had ever made it this far. Behind Ava, the gallery was packed. Activists, press, and victims who had remained silent for too long. At the defendant's table sat Brent Mallory, in a suit that couldn't hide the arrogance in his posture. His attorney, an expensive man from an even more expensive law firm, leaned in and whispered. Mallory smirked, but Ava didn't flinch. The judge entered. The bailiff called the room to order. The charges read aloud weren't just about Ava's case. They included official misconduct, theft under color of law, abuse of authority, racial profiling, and civil rights violations across 6 victims. For the first time in his life, Officer Mallory was the one being scrutinized. Opening statements began. Danielle Holt's voice was calm but powerful. This case is about more than a rogue cop. It's about a man who used his badge not to serve or protect, but to prey, to steal, to humiliate, to terrorize women who looked like me, like my client, like so many in this courtroom. We will prove beyond any doubt that Brent Mallory was not a protector. He was a predator with a shield. The defense claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Mistaken identities, camera footage taken out of context, former disgruntled employees trying to take down a good cop. But they hadn't counted on the evidence. Ava took the stand first. She spoke slowly, clearly. Her voice cracked, but it never broke. She detailed the stop, the theft, the fear, the silence, and then the fight. Her testimony was followed by Nadine Foster, who relived the trauma of that night in 2019, her hands shaking as she described how Mallory had pulled her over, accused her of being a prostitute, and reached under her seat without cause. Then came Luis Delgado, who played the footage he'd saved. The courtroom gasped as the screen showed Mallory yanking a woman by her arm, then reaching in her purse and pocketing something before slamming her against the car. Even the judge leaned forward. But the moment that changed everything came when Darius Lane took the stand. He brought charts, timelines, digital footprints, cross-reference call logs, timestamped dashcam voids, and body cam malfunctions. He showed that Mallory had filed incomplete reports for 26 separate traffic stops, all involving black women, with no citations issued and no evidence recorded. It wasn't sloppy work. It was calculated. The prosecution rested its case. Silence filled the courtroom like fog. Then, something unexpected happened. Brent Mallory's defense team tried to cut a deal. A reduced sentence in exchange for no civil suit. Ava refused. "I didn't come here to make a deal," she said. "I came here for justice." The trial ran for 9 days. On the 10th, the jury delivered its verdict. Guilty on all counts. Gasps and tears echoed across the gallery. Ava didn't cry. She stood, back straight, watching the man who once laughed in her face as he was handcuffed and led away. Outside, reporters rushed toward her. Microphones hovered. "What do you feel right now, Ms. Carter?" one asked. Ava glanced at the sky. For the first time in months, it didn't feel heavy. "I feel seen," she said, "and I feel ready to keep going." A city reckons. The news was everywhere. Officer Brent Mallory found himself on the front pages for all the wrong reasons. His arrest made headlines across the country, a stark reminder of the abuses of power that often went unchallenged. The weight of his crimes hung heavy in Pinewood Heights, but the ripple effects were being felt far beyond that city. As Ava sat in her apartment, watching the coverage, her phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls. Some from people she barely knew. Some from people she hadn't heard from in years. They were offering congratulations, sympathy, and even more tips about other officers who had abused their power. But none of it felt real. None of it felt like the victory she'd imagined. "You did it," Tanya said one evening when they were having dinner together. "You really did it. People are talking about it. People are finally talking about it." Ava took a slow breath. "It's not over yet." Tanya raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You took it down, Ava. You proved he was a monster. Taking down Mallory was just one part," Ava said, shaking her head. "The system is still there. It's still protecting him. All the people who knew and did nothing, they're still there." "Are you thinking about them now?" Tanya asked, her voice gentle. "Ava, this is huge. You've already made history. This is one battle won. I can't stop until the system changes. I want a world where we don't just take down the bad apples, but the whole tree," Ava said quietly. "I'm not finished yet." It was then that she realized the real battle wasn't about Mallory anymore. It was about accountability. It was about breaking the culture that allowed him to thrive. The way he had used his badge, his power, to terrorize people like her for so long. She started pushing for reforms. She worked with activists and lawyers, consulting with community leaders to establish programs that would hold the police accountable. She spoke at town halls and held interviews on national news. Every time the press asked what she hoped would come from a case, she answered simply, "Change." But change was never easy, especially in a small town where the police department had long been considered untouchable. Days turned into weeks. Tensions escalated. The city council called for hearings. The Department of Justice opened an inquiry into systemic racism within the department. Activists took to the streets, demanding more than just one guilty officer. They wanted a restructuring of the entire force. They wanted real reform. Chief Randall Mallory, Brent's uncle, was placed on administrative leave, and rumors swirled that other officers had been implicated in similar crimes, though none of them had been publicly named. But despite the outward signs of reform, the undercurrent of resistance was palpable. Ava felt it every time she walked into a meeting with city leaders. They would nod politely, but there was always that lingering unease. They didn't want real change. They wanted to preserve the status quo. One evening, as Ava was preparing for another interview, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Miss Carter?" a voice asked. "Yes. I need to talk to you. It's about Officer Mallory and what you uncovered." The voice was raspy, shaky. "I know what he did. I know about the other officers. You can't stop now. They'll try to bury everything again." Ava's heart raced. "Who is this? Someone who can't stay quiet anymore. Meet me tomorrow at the old church on 5th and Maple. I have a name you're looking for." The call ended before she could ask any more questions. The hidden names. Ava sat in her car, staring at the old church on 5th and Maple. The building, a relic from a bygone era, had long been abandoned, its windows boarded up, its doors rotting with age. The church had once been a place of refuge for the community, but now it was just another forgotten structure, left to decay. Ava wasn't sure why she had trusted the anonymous caller, but something in their voice had compelled her to listen. She had been chasing shadows, trying to unearth a truth buried so deep that it felt like it had no bottom. And yet here she was. She parked her car across the street and made her way toward the church, her steps heavy but determined. As she approached the rusted doors, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, tall, with broad shoulders and a hood pulled low over his face. He stepped into the light, his eyes scanning the street before he looked directly at Ava. "You came," he said, his voice hoarse. "Good. Who are you?" Ava asked, her heart pounding. "What do you know about Mallory?" The man hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled folder. He handed it to her without a word. Ava took the folder, opening it carefully. Inside were names. Pages of them. A list of officers. Internal memos. Surveillance footage, some of which had been tampered with. Each page painted a picture of systemic corruption within the Pinewood Heights Police Department, a web of abuse and cover-ups stretching far beyond Officer Mallory. The names of officers who had taken part in similar crimes. The names of city officials who had turned a blind eye. And the names of the women who had been hurt, their suffering buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and lies. "Why are you giving this to me?" Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because no one else will listen," the man replied. "I've seen what Mallory did. I've seen what they've all done. They thought they could keep it quiet, but now they're all exposed. You can't stop. You have to make sure this goes public." Ava swallowed hard, her mind racing. But this isn't just about Mallory anymore. This is about the entire department. The man nodded, his face hardening. "Exactly. You have to tear it all down. Expose everything." She looked at the folder again, the weight of it sinking in. She had what she needed, but at what cost? "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you telling me all this?" The man's face twisted in pain. "Because I can't live with it anymore. I was part of the cover-up. I helped bury the truth. I thought I was doing the right thing, following orders. But I can't pretend anymore. You deserve to know the truth." Ava nodded slowly. "Thank you." Without another word, the man turned and disappeared into the darkness. Ava stood there for a moment, the folder still clutched tightly in her hands. The fight was no longer just about one cop. It was about an entire system that needed to be torn apart. And she was the one who would lead that charge. The final reckoning. Ava didn't wait. She didn't hesitate. She immediately contacted Darius, who had been her rock throughout the entire ordeal. They pored over the documents together, matching the names, corroborating the evidence, and drafting a plan to go public. They reached out to trusted journalists and activists, planning their next move carefully. They knew the stakes. The power they were up against was far greater than a single officer or even a police department. This was about changing the culture of law enforcement, about dismantling the system that allowed officers like Mallory to thrive. Ava had known this truth for a long time, but now it was crystal clear. The fight had only just begun. It took 2 weeks before they were ready. 2 weeks of late nights, strategy meetings, and making sure every loose end was tied up. But on the night they had planned, everything fell into place. Darius had secured an interview with Lydia Andrews, a reporter from a major national outlet. She had been covering the story from the beginning and was now ready to go all in, revealing the entire operation that had been hiding in plain sight. The truth would be broadcast to millions. Ava sat in front of the camera, calm but resolute. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but she didn't flinch. She had fought for this. She had sacrificed for this. "Tonight, I'm not just speaking for myself," Ava said, her voice steady. "I'm speaking for every woman who was robbed, humiliated, and silenced. I'm speaking for every black person who has been victimized by a system that claims to protect them. This is for the women whose voices were stolen, for the families who lost their loved ones, for the lives that have been destroyed by the very people meant to protect them." The footage aired. The names, the faces, the truth. Officer Brent Mallory was no longer just a disgraced cop. He was the symbol of a deeper, more pervasive rot, one that reached into every corner of law enforcement, into the political machinery that kept it in place. And Ava? She had become the face of the movement to tear it down. A new dawn. Weeks passed, and the world began to shift. Brent Mallory was convicted on all charges, but that was just the beginning. The investigations into the Pinewood Heights Police Department led to a complete overhaul. The officers involved in the cover-up were arrested. The city council was forced to enact sweeping reforms, including mandatory anti-racism training, the creation of an independent civilian oversight board, and a new protocol for handling complaints against officers. Ava, though, didn't stop. She continued to speak out, working with other victims and organizations to push for justice, not just in Pinewood Heights, but across the country. Her work was far from over, but she knew one thing for certain. The system was broken, and she was going to fix it. Epilogue. Ava stood at the steps of the courthouse, her face illuminated by the soft light of the setting sun. The wind gently brushed through her hair, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. Behind her, the city was changing. The people were speaking out, and justice, though slow, was finally being served. Ava smiled. She had won, but the fight? It was just beginning.